After nearly a century of exposure to Ottawa's extreme weather, the building's heritage masonry is deteriorating. It's a massive undertaking. 20,000 square meters of masonry surface to be cleaned. That's about 365,000 stones that must be removed for repair or replacement. Jeff Meek is one of the project managers working on the masonry restoration.
As we continue around, so you can see on these stones a lot of weathering, very much likely due to wind and rain because we are in the northwest corner of the building. We get a great deal of wind exposure and often in combination with water and freeze thaw, it weathers away the stones. Again, you can see in here, it's almost kind of concaved right out. And this is actually not the worst example I've seen. We have others elsewhere in the building where you could stick your hand inside the stone and there's almost like a T-handle on there. The approaches over the years have been very much an ad hoc type of approach. So if you can imagine up till the restorations in the 2000s and 2010s before the library, it's a lot of sporadic maintenance campaigns where they just deal with some unique parts, and again, other projects just basically tiding the building over until the big job. But now the big job's here, we're taking the holistic restoration approach.
And of course, that big job is the current center block project.
We started in, I believe, 2019 area with some of the more enabling projects. So you might have remembered there was a very large stone retaining wall in the front lawn. So that was the first thing that we did. We removed that very carefully, disassembled it and sent it to storage. That allowed, among a number of other things, allowed us to mobilize the center block construction site, which led into a variety of, we call them preliminary works. One of those preliminary works was the masonry restoration of the north wall, which we're looking at right now. So the north wall started in, I believe it was circa 2020, and took just about a year and a half. So that's complete now, and as you can see here, the stones have all been cleaned, the mortar's been restored. And as we progress into the rest of the building, we're moving basically from the north to the east and the west and around to the south. So generally speaking, the masonry follows a pretty linear sequence. So when we arrive, it looks much different than this. The stones are quite dark. In some cases, you'll see the mortar is actually chipping and falling out of the wall. So the first step that we come and do is all of the joints are very carefully, it's called raked or kind of scraped out. So each of these joints here, you can see they look all nice and fresh now. They've all been raked out over the first couple months of the job. Then we advance into something unique about the center block is the structure has a number of steel components. So as we go across the wall, we expose, they're called the ends. So if you can imagine a beam that comes straight out of the building and terminates somewhere close to the end of the wall, we expose that, we check the condition of it, and then we clean and repair it if necessary, and we rebuild the wall around it. So again, that's not necessarily all buildings require this, but the center block in particular does. And then back to the traditional more masonry work, this is a very time-intensive process. In fact, on the north wall, there were about just over 20 kilometers of mortar joints that were raked and repointed. And again, that's representing the north wall, not the building as a whole. So it is a very, very large-scale project.
And for this large-scale project, laser technology is being used, a 21st century solution for a medieval craft.
At a very high level, it ablates, so it's like a heat, essentially, and it's almost something out of sci-fi. It is a laser. We point at the building and essentially burn off the dirt.
As with most of the work being done here, ensuring the building is restored to its historic look is integral to the project. And that includes the stonework. It's all about getting as close to the original as possible.
So when we replace the stone, we generally try and use the same material if it's available. If not, we look for, rather our conservators look for material that is from the same geological deposit. So for the masonry in particular, the exterior masonry in particular, we have 3 stone types on the wall. So borea, which is all of the decorative elements that you see, the band courses here, the window surrounds, the sculptures, and some of these kind of gable looking items up towards the end. That is sourced from Cleveland, Ohio, and is very similar to the material that was originally used to construct the building. The infill or the field stone, so all of these stones in between the decorative elements, so those are originally from a quarry in Nepean, Ontario. That quarry has long since closed. And we now use what's called St. Canute stone, which is from a quarry near Mirabel, Quebec, the St. Canute quarry, Les Pierres St. Canute. And it is very similar geologically to the stone, and again, aesthetically, it's almost the same. The other quarry, or the stone type that you don't see on this wall is Wallace. Wallace tends to be around some door surrounds. You see a lot more Wallace on the Peace Tower on the south. The Wallace is actually from the Wallace quarry still in Nova Scotia, when we have an agreement to purchase from them as well. And a number of stones in the interior where a similar process is undertaken, where they assess if we can get the same, if not, how close can we get to the original.
While masonry work continues, printed decorative tarps known as trompe-l'oeil are being installed. Trompe-l'oeil translates as to trick the eye.
So the idea, at least from a visitor experience perspective, is we have thousands of tourists that visit Parliament Hill each year. They don't likely want to come and see a giant white tarp in front of this monument they may have traveled thousands of kilometers to see. In addition to, there's very particular view sheds from all over Ottawa where Parliament is a very iconic building. So the trompe-l'oeil is essentially a print or graphical representation of the wall behind it. So the idea when you look at it is that you're essentially looking at the same wall. And right now you'll notice it is only on the north, and that's because we only have scaffold on the north. So as we continue around the building, this trompe-l'oeil will follow the scaffold.
These decorative tarps serve many purposes. They also protect workers from extreme weather conditions, ensuring work can continue through all seasons.
The tarping on the scaffold serves a couple purposes. One is with restoring the wall, we generate a lot of dust. So if you can imagine, we do want to contain that dust, and there are a number of safety protocols in place to make sure workers are protected, so they have to wear respirators and all these types of things. It's also critical for the work itself. So if you can imagine mixing mortar, which is essentially like a cement, it has to cure in very particular climate conditions, so specific temperatures and humidities. Without the tarp on the building, we can't achieve those temperatures. It would vary too much, and it would very much restrict our work hours. So the trompe-l'oeil and the tarp itself allows us to moderate the climate within the scaffold and essentially ensure continuous work.